This is the second or third attempt at this, and as usual, I'm having technical difficulties because I'm not a technical man. We are here with Canadian Arctic Radio to speak about Alberta ascending. If you, actually, everything has gotten all news has gotten drowned out for the last 2 weeks, so nothing can be.
I'll bet.
No one should know what's going on anywhere right now, considering the world situation.
Exactly. You mean World War III and all that stuff?
You know, there's some stuff going on. Some people did some things somewhere. You know, not sure what all it was.
Yeah, there's some things going on over in the sand.
Yeah, something like that. But all right, some of our people are jumping back in. Mark's back with us. Sorry about all those technical difficulties. He's saying good evening, patriotic Americans and Canadians. So we are going to be talking about tonight what's been going on with what I hope becomes, dare I say it? Dare I? Dean is with us. Good evening, Dean. I'm not going to say state because there's a process that has to be gone through. But I hope, and someday in the not too distant future, that we have a very special alliance with the free state of Alberta. And Pete's going to talk to us about this because there have been developments on this front, not towards them being in any kind of, union with us hairy animals to the south, but just about the whole topic general. We want to give the background real quick, sir?
Sure. So where would I start?
Yeah. Well,
I guess we could just start with the cultural differences between the East and the West in Canada. And I guess the economic differences too, how we're kind of like a resource town to the central, if you will.
Sorry, you caught me off guard there.
No, that's fine. It's all natural. I guess the long and the short of it is that Alberta, the province, is seeking autonomy from the rest of Canada, mostly from the control of the central powers. We'll just call them the central powers, which is, Ontario and Quebec, which is the oldest and I guess the old boys club of Canada.
So we got so there's an independence movement in Alberta, and there's a campaign going on to schedule a vote on whether the majority of Albertans would want to discuss independence or what's the vote. Right now there's like it's like a petition going on, right?
Yes.
And it looks like the petition, it has to reach a certain threshold.
Yeah.
And then once the petition reaches a certain threshold, what's it trigger? It triggers
a referendum question. So there's already going to be a referendum this, is it October or November? I can't remember. On immigration questions. So what'll happen is if we reach that threshold, it'll be included as a question on that referendum.
And the question is, what's the actual question?
Well, I think the question would be something like, do you want to see Alberta remain part of Canada? Or something to that effect. It'll be something straightforward, yes and no. There won't be any gray area there.
So there's not a verbiage, there's not a set verbiage yet that the question would be?
There could be, but I'm not knowledgeable enough on that bit. But
yeah.
So this whole process kind of started last year, where we wanted to start collecting signatures for this threshold, for this petition, and there was an injunction in our province, and another group came in called Canada Forever, I think it was called. And they wanted to have their own petition to have a referendum, or to block the referendum question. So they stopped ours and they let them do theirs. And that's over with now. And now we can finally get on with it. And so it's looking really good Like that,
Really?
this is going to show up as a question on the referendum this fall. So
So how
that's
high
where
is the what's the threshold of, like, I guess it's signatures? How high do you have to get?
we have to reach 177,000.
By
And
when is
judging
there a deadline?
by, well, the deadline was supposedly May 2nd,
Mhm.
uh, starting from the beginning of January. And now there's a federal Supreme Court judge that wants to try another injunction to get it shortened to the middle of April. So we're facing a short timeline now, too.
Do you know how many signatures there have been so far?
Nobody knows. It hasn't
Nobody
been
knows.
released yet. But I can
Uh,
tell you, like from the when they first started it, they did a kickoff campaign, and they
hmm
sent roaming basically to every town. Every town got their night, kind of thing. Our town
hmm
got 3 nights. I went there to sign the petition, and it took me an hour to get through. The line was so long, and when I left, the line was still just as long.
Oh wow.
Uh, and that was just one night. And we saw this here in Alberta coming up on our local news that every town that these kickoff uh, parties went to, there was lineups. In the cities, there were lineups blocked long going into sign these petitions. So
Mm.
it's been very promising. Now that that's over, we've got about 7,500 canvassers that are, collecting the casual person or somebody that was on the fence before, maybe that want to try signing
hmm
it now. There's several canvassers in the United States as well. Places like Yuma, Arizona, where a lot of Canadians go in the winter, have set up their own canvassing stations. And when that first opened up, I saw a line up there as well. So even the Albertans in Yuma are signing it. So yeah, things are looking quite good. We're at the
Well,
point now where the media is starting to throw lies around and trash talk, and the harassment is starting on the social media
really.
platforms. But yeah, but other than
Mm.
that, I think it's going good. Yeah.
So what's giving you so much optimism? Is it just the big turnouts everyone was seeing? Is there any way to sort of judge this thing?
Yeah, and I guess it's hard to have like this constant level of optimism because there's so much trash talk going back and forth that sometimes you get a little discouraged. But I would say overall, because when I drive around, I
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of delivery work. I see a lot of blue flags everywhere. Um, Mind you, this is in rural locations too. I don't know what the cities are like so much, but I have a feeling that they're probably evenly split, I would say at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's the social media aspect too. I can just see, for example, I got invited into a group last week called what was it called again? Alberta Rising,
Mm-hmm.
and it had already 175,000 members in it. Now I don't know if they're all from Alberta, but
Yeah,
that's
so I
pretty
think
good.
I think they have a YouTube channel, if I'm not mistaken.
It could be,
I,
yeah.
I
There's a
think
lot.
that's where I follow Alberta Rising, is on the YouTube. That's
Yeah,
actually where I got the title for the tonight's stream. Was instead of Alberta Rising, I did Alberta Ascending. But yeah, I essentially ripped it off from those guys. So if you ever talk
perfect.
to them, apologize for me. Uh,
I'm sure they'll be fine with it. I think
so
just
yeah,
getting any kind of awareness out there to anybody is just a good service right now. So
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So what happens? So if this referendum passes, does that trigger anything definite, or what happens once, if how if the referendum vote comes out positive? What does that trigger?
well, that'll trigger negotiations. Um, what that's going to look like afterwards, I'm not 100% sure, but it
Right.
could be it could be anything from, look, Ottawa, we've got you over the barrel now. We want to start doing what we want to do, to that's it. We're completely done and we're going to start our own country.
Mhm.
Or there's other proponents too that say 51st state, but that's really hard to say what's going to happen, you know, in the aftermath. But there's definitely going to be a few years of negotiations going on before anything solid happens, I would imagine. It's kind of like when Czechoslovakia broke into two countries, right? It didn't happen overnight. It kind of slowly became the Czech Republic and Slovakia. So, or yeah, yeah, whatever.
Mhm.
um, so that's what I think would happen. I think they would use it as negotiation. We've got you over the barrel thing first
Right.
to try and see if we could maybe correct some problems here. But if I don't think that's going to happen. And so I think in the long term, it's just going to end up being a question of, are we going to be sovereign?
Right. Because that, so like the thing here is, if someone's not aware of the controversy, is that Alberta is like the economic engine of Canada, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's
Like
right. Yeah.
all pretty much most of the money, as far as like there's oil, and I believe there's a pretty strong agricultural element. And then is the
Yes.
mining in Alberta, or is that farther north?
There's a lot of coal mining in Alberta, and there's some minerals, but I would say that's more north. Yeah, in the Arctic and then eastern Canada. But then we also have forestry. There's a lot of resources we have here. So fresh
Yeah.
water,
And
tons of
and
fresh water.
and so which is which is a big deal. Uh, ask Iran. So the conflict here is that Alberta is a fairly traditional rural place that's just being completely strangled by these crazy lunatics back east. I mean, it's the same dynamic as we can see in America, really, right? I mean, we got basically these eastern elites that are trying to throttle the goose that laid the golden egg out west, and you guys are just trying to do anything you can to assert some sanity on this process of nation building we're all supposed to be engaged on.
Yeah, and we've kind of reached our limit where we just the straw that broke the camel's back has already been placed,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, I mean, and this has just been an ongoing thing for a century. You know, I remember seeing a cartoon from about 1920, and it showed a picture of a cow, and there's three farmers feeding the cow, and each one of the farmers was Alberta. One was Alberta, one was Saskatchewan, one was Manitoba.
Oh
And
yeah.
then there's two guys at the other end milking the cow, and they're wearing the big, you know, the top hat and the suit. Ontario and Quebec. They're the ones. So, and it's just been getting worse. So, we send a lot of money. We have something that's called transfer payments here. So, it, it's supposed to be there to equalize Canada, so that have-not provinces can, you know, boost up their resources, their natural resources, and develop on their own. But it doesn't get used for that. It gets used for social engineering projects and university BS and whatnot.
Hmm.
So, and this has been to the tune of, you know, maybe 10 billion a year over
Wow.
the last, since maybe 1970, I would think.
Hmm.
And yeah, so if you do the math, probably close to $500 billion has left this province just to support whatever you want to call it. I guess when it boils down to is just the left, you know.
Right.
It goes to the DEI stuff. It goes to the wokeisms and things like MAID. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Mm.
Medically assisted suicide,
Oh,
basically.
oh yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes. Some pretty horrific things, and Canada's not alone in this. There's a lot of countries that are going down this path, but just
Yeah.
some horrific abuses in these systems. I don't. I uh, Most of my information about Canada comes out of a podcast done by a woman out of who she's in Mexico now, but she's a dual Canadian American citizen named Megan Murphy. And where she was from, one of the cities out west, but like right above Seattle or something, one of those over there, if I remember correctly. And she
Yeah.
was a crazy left wing socialist for a long time, and she kind of got red pilled during COVID, and she's still not a right winger, but she's pretty close. She's probably more libertarian than anything. So I hear a lot from her, and I don't know where she's at on the assisted suicide stuff because like she's still she hasn't switched camps on abortion and things like that. She really is kind of a more libertarian, but really interesting woman. Her podcast is called The Same Drug, and so I most of my information about Canada I actually get through her because she engages with. She's really big against the trans stuff, and she used to be a big feminist, and she doesn't call herself a feminist anymore. You and I would call her a feminist, but she's on a journey, and she appears to be on a journey in the right direction. Uh, and I've heard her talk about the assisted suicide stuff, but I don't remember how egregious she said it was in Canada as compared to say some of the Scandinavian countries where it's really really bad too. Uh, where it's essentially it's essentially a Nazi style murder of genetic undesirables is what it's boiled down to. Who can we kill to get out of the system so we don't have to pay for them anymore?
Yeah, and it always starts out as how did it start out here? These people that are suffering extreme, they're dying and they're suffering a lot. They want to die with dignity, so they start with the Die with Dignity campaign until it
Mm-hmm.
gets into everybody's head that this is probably the best thing and blah blah blah. I would think like Sweden's probably been at it for a lot longer though. I
Yeah,
think
yeah. I think they were one of the first countries. I don't remember if it was them or Norway or Switzerland. It's one of those over there that sort of debuted this, and there's one of them over there is starting to pull back from it a little bit because it scared them because it got so prevalent, and it's just healthy 20-year-olds who are a little depressed or who are depressed and we don't know how to are getting medical suicide, and it's just insane. These aren't people who are in pain. These are, and then of course there's always the question about coercion. And does this person really want to commit suicide, or do they have a caretaker who maybe is sick of caring for them and is sort of
yeah,
pushing them into it? And uh, yeah, this is one of the terrible, terrible things happening in the West that will bring judgment down upon our heads if we don't, you know, take a stand against it.
yeah, and these are the kinds of things Alberta's trying to fight against. We don't want, it's definitely more conservative here, but there's definitely a lot more people of religion here.
Mhm.
Uh, not just conservative or fiscally conservative. There is a lot of Christianity here still,
Mhm.
and the people have families here. Uh, Alberta is the only province in Canada that has a population pyramid that's properly oriented.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, the rest of Canada is inverted.
Mm.
Their population's decreasing, and that's why they're
Right.
bringing
More
in.
old. And this is
Yeah,
more old people than young people, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, and of course, the bulk of the population in these central parts of Canada, and also on the west coast, um, they're at those ages now where they're being supported by the younger generation. There's less of them, so they're taking their pension. But by the time my generation gets there, there won't be a pension because
Mhm.
there just won't be enough people paying into the system anymore. And those are some of the things we want to get away from.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Someone just tagged me in a comment, and it's a bunch of emojis that I don't know what they mean. I can't even see them actually. That might be an exploding bomb. That's someone looking through a finger, and I can't see what's after that.
Oh,
Uh,
I didn't bring my glasses, so I can't wait to see
yeah,
anything.
and of course, Mark had to strike a blow for the Crusades. He's saying that Alberta has a correct population pyramid because they're Catholic. Fair play, Mark.
There
You
is
get
a,
that one for free.
there is a strong Catholic population in Alberta for sure. That may have something to do with it.
Yeah, while we're on it, if I'm not mistaken, do you attend an SSPX? Is that what I remember you telling me?
Yes, I do.
If you want to later on, if you want to talk about it, I'd love to talk to you about that. The controversy with the SSPX right now and the
Oh,
appointment of the bishops and stuff. That's really interesting to me. But
sure,
we don't have to get into that now. Saskatchewan is right next door to Alberta, right? Just to the east of Alberta.
that's correct.
Are, and I know in the last time we talked, you had just mentioned that cartoon with the cow and Alberta and Saskatchewan and uh,
Manitoba.
Manitoba feeding the cow. Are there similar movements going on there?
I don't know about Manitoba, but I've heard that Saskatchewan has tried to do something similar. I don't know what kind of momentum they have there, though.
Where is Manitoba geographically? I don't know where it's situated in Canada.
Manitoba is Manitoba is east of Saskatchewan. It'd be the next province over from
Okay,
Saskatchewan.
so
Yeah.
these are the three center.
Yes.
This is Canadian flyover country. I mean, this is the exact same debate we're having down here in America, basically, where the two coasts are just in batshit insane, crazy people, and those of us stuck in the middle paying for all this garbage are just begging for any kind of relief we could find.
Yep.
Uh, okay.
Yeah. I guess like you could say Montreal, Ontario, not Ontario, Toronto, and Vancouver, which is the city you were talking about before above Seattle. There are kind of like city states, and the rest of Canada is just like a resource. What's the word? A resource colony to the city. Those three city states.
Mm.
So I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. They're just city states that are mining the areas around them for resources. It makes perfect sense. So
yeah,
Canada has a federalist system, right?
yeah. So it's a confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
So
And and is there a written constitution in Canada? I should know this. I'm sorry, I'm ignorant on this stuff.
there's not a constitution, but there's a charter of rights and freedoms, which would be similar, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's different system, and it's based off of constitutional monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
The legal part of it, the structural part of Canada is a confederacy. So provincial powers pretty much overrule federal powers on just about everything. So in other words, education that belongs to the province. Um, Healthcare system that belongs to the province. Things like that. Our school system belongs to the province. It doesn't belong to the country. So there's one reason why I would necessarily want to be the 51st state, and that's the Department of Education in the United States.
That's the reason
We
why I
don't
don't
have
want to be the
that.
13th state.
Exactly. We don't have that here. We control our own education system. So when the people of Alberta say we want to pull out all the transsexual books out of the school system, they'll do it. It's got nothing to do with Ottawa or anything like that. So we're good that way. We're actually not that. We're more independent than you'd think, and it's almost to the point where it's just like a formality now, where we just gotta. Everybody's just got to say, yeah, we just want to be rid of Canada now, and we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
So is there a mechanism in that charter for secession for breaking away from the Confederacy?
That's a good question. I wish I could answer it. Not probably not in the charter. Uh, it's in something. It's in an accord somewhere. I can't remember what it's called.
So
I'm not.
there is some kind of mechanism somewhere in the legal
Yes.
system that says you can you can duck out if you want to.
Yeah, and Quebec has actually already done this twice. They've had a referendum twice. The second time was very close, actually. I think it was like 49% in favor of.
I remember
So
one of
they,
those. One of those was in my lifetime, at least. Just
yeah, it would have been in the 90s. So yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
that's why I remember that. I thought so. Just just play crazy what if games, right? Now,
Mhm.
Alberta doesn't have access to the sea, correct? It's landlocked by itself, right?
That's right.
All right. And okay, so this is my crazy Americanism. You can just set this aside. By any chance, does Alberta touch Alaska?
No,
Oh,
it's close. It's close, but
really?
it doesn't. There's the Yukon is in the way, so yeah.
All right. What's the Yukon's position on all this? Have we heard from the Yukon yet?
No, we haven't heard anything from them. But
Okay.
they're just a territory, so
Oh, really?
I
They're
would
not
be
a state.
no. There's 3 territories in the Arctic area and then in the north. They're
Mm-hmm.
not full provinces, so I'm not exactly sure how that works with the federal government, but generally speaking, they're more. Uh, they kind of tend to vote more towards the left, and I think it
Okay.
has to do with the native population. But
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's a factor in Alberta too, right? Doesn't the native population control a bunch of land?
they do. They have reserves up here too, just like in the states, but they're managed by the federal government. And it's funny that you brought that up too, because the left in Alberta just tried a political stunt with the Indians. Uh, a lot of the chiefs, they're kind of paid off by the federal government to be there, you know.
Yeah.
So they've got together and they had their own vote of, they call it a vote of non-confidence in the Alberta government. And then they brought all these chiefs into the legislature building, which is our capital, and they were in the gallery shouting down at the members of the assembly during their session. So that would be the equivalent of special interest group going into the Senate and yelling down at the Senate while they were in session, kind of thing.
Mm.
Pretty disrespectful. It was a
Yeah.
big political stunt, and it just angered more Albertans, I'm pretty sure.
Mm. Yeah. Mark is saying something about the Leech Lake Accords, and I don't
Meat
know.
Lake, of course.
I'm think that was maybe what the mechanism for leaving the Confederacy. Maybe that's about when that comment popped up. Is when we were talking about that. So that may be what he is referring to there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Meech Lake Accords is what it was called. Yes.
The Meech Lake Accords.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, I made my thoughts clear the last time we had this conversation. It would just, excite me to no end for Alberta to be formally aligned with America in some way. But what do you think most Albertans are looking for? I know, I mean, you guys love your country like we love ours. So, I mean, most people would prefer to stay Canadian with certain, changes. What do you think would would mollify the majority of the population up there? Just lower taxes, more control over where that money goes. Loosen restrictions on the oil and gas industry. What's the
Well, I think a lot of those things. I think it's my impression is that it's too little, too late now.
mm,
If the federal government loosened up a bunch of things, I don't think it would make much difference. I get the distinct impression that people are really tired of being part of Canada. We're embarrassed. We had Trudeau for 10 years. That was enough. Um,
hey, he's dating Katy Perry now. I mean, come
well,
on.
for now, he's probably not dating. He's probably a cuck, but whatever. Uh,
Dude, as soon as
uh,
that guy got out of office, he dumped the wife and kids. Like he left whatever y'all's presidential mansion is without them. He did not wait
oh,
1 minute.
she left him actually.
Oh, did she leave him?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
during
I didn't know.
COVID too.
What's that?
It was during the COVID epidemic is when she left him.
Oh, really? Oh, see,
Yeah.
I thought he had dumped her when he just was done being president and didn't need a beard anymore.
No, he's just a big loser.
Look at Mark.
Anyways, I mean,
If
he
I
can
was
only
a young
be.
man, I would move to Alberta, marry a nice chubby local, and have a dozen children. Yep. You want
Yes,
you
he
want a
was.
girl who's padded in all the right ways.
That's the
You
ones
want
you
her to
want.
just be a little overweight in all the right areas.
That's right. I believe the word
And
is voluptuous.
yes, voluptuous. And as a man with a dozen children, well, a dozen plus, I can tell you that's exactly what you want to do. Um, somebody asked earlier about the tobacco. Oh, it was Antifa Youth. I'm just smoking these Dominican Republic seconds. I always smoke. They're kind of a no name. I get them in blocks of 20 at the local humidor. Uh, I really like them, but I like them because they're $2 a piece. I have no idea how good they taste because they taste like $2. All right, so you got till you said mid-April or mid-May.
Well, we're hoping until we get the full length, which I think was May 2nd.
Who's counting all these signatures? Are they
It's
trustworthy?
probably, yeah, it's government approved. Everything's been formally, all these canvassers and everything have to go through a procedure to be legally doing what they're doing. The signatures collected you have to present 2 pieces of ID. Everything's up above board on it. What was the question again?
Like who's count? You had mentioned that you don't really
Oh,
have an idea about how many signatures have been collected. So I guess that means it's not like a private or public organization is collecting signatures. They're then going to submit to the government. You're waiting for the government to count the signatures. And do you think the government is going to accurately count and report these things, or?
well, I think who's doing the counting is a group called the Alberta Prosperity Project, I
Oh, okay.
believe. And yes, I do believe the government will do it. Will be fair with this because our premier here, she's really good. Like she wants to see a fair democratic process, and I believe it
Mm-hmm.
because I've seen the lies for so long now. It's hard to not see the truth when you see somebody speaking.
Mm-hmm. She at least means well, if nothing else.
I think so. I mean, she was the only provincial leader that met Trump. Um, Everybody else was they called it elbows up. We hate Trump. We're tariffing you back. And she was the only one that went down there and said, "Hey, can we make a deal?" And
Yeah.
we really appreciated that. We don't want these tariffs. You don't want these tariffs. Let's just
Well, I
work
don't want
together.
them on you. I want them on everybody else, but I don't want them on you.
Well, you don't want them either because if softwood is coming from Canada and he charges whatever 20% tariff, then you got to pay 20% more for our wood,
So,
or you're just going
like,
to buy yours.
uh, now these are all really interesting questions, and before we delve into them, let me say I do believe Canada and Mexico are unique, obviously in their relationship to America, and they should be unique in their relationship to America, and there should be uh, extra considerations given to those because I mean we share what a 1,000 miles of border with both of you, if I'm not mistaken. The American Canadian border, I think, is the longest border in the world, if I'm not mistaken. I can't
Yeah,
remember. What's that?
should be about 2,500 miles.
Yeah, yeah, it's something insane. And if I remember correctly, it is the longest national, border between two nations in the whole world.
Yeah.
I mean, that you just have to have, Quaker Oats buys all their oats from Canada. You just have to have a special relationship in that case. There's no way around it. Just from a defense standpoint, I mean,
Mhm.
if nothing else, and then get these border controls. I will say this though, I am a big fan of tariffs, smart tariffs. Uh, obviously, we don't have anywhere near the timber industry that you guys have. We do have a pretty big timber industry in my state. Almost all of our timber goes to pulpwood. We don't. None of our stuff gets used for lumber for the most part because we have yellow pine, and yellow pine's just not as good as the white pine and the Douglas fir and some of that stuff that you guys farther north have. Uh, but yeah, I think sane, reasonable tariffs are really good policy for every nation. Like Canada should protect its industry. Canada should protect its economy. Mexico should protect their economy and their industry. America should. Every country should be looking to protect its economic well-being without damaging the economic well-being of their neighbors. And the closer you are to that nation, the more they should. Okay, Antifu is telling us here. Longest international land border is in the world is between Canada and the United States, stretching approximately 5,525 miles. You know what? We weren't thinking about Alaska. We were just thinking about the border between, the lower 48 and Canada. So yeah, if you add in the Alaskan border, wow, 5,000 miles. That's like a third of the way around the world. I think it's 14,000 miles around the world, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that.
And yeah, we have over a 5,500-mile border between Canada and America. That's just insane. You can't pretend like that there's not doesn't have to be an excessive level of cooperation between the two countries. There just has to be. That's just too much. And forget the shared culture, forget the shared history. If you just talk about the practicalities of 5,500 miles of border through very, very valuable, resource-rich territory, you've just got to get along. You've just got to cooperate. There's no choice.
Yeah, we used to have a really good relationship, and back in the 50s, Canada and the United States built the DEW line, which was in the Arctic, called the Distant Early Warning System, a
Mm-hmm.
series of like a net, like a radar net, to track incoming Russians, and they did this
Mm-hmm.
through NORAD, and Canada had the best interceptors in the world, and the United States had the best fighters in the world, and then all of a sudden everything changed, and Canada just became this colony. It just slowly went down. I would say probably in the 1960s. It seems like, I don't know why, but a
Because
lot of things
everything went to
happened
shit in the 60s.
in the 60s. Yeah,
That DEW line, I've just been learning about this recently. And that was a kind of a little bit of an engineering feat, making those series of outposts up there in the Arctic. It's way out in the middle of nowhere, and they had to fly all these supplies in stuff. Everything that went to those places had to get flown in, and they were using these converted World War II bombers, and I can't remember which bomber it was, but it was like one of the lesser known ones or something. I can't remember now. It was a really interesting story. I wish I remembered all the details. Uh, but it was pretty cool. And the thing I was watching was about the airplanes. It wasn't about necessarily the building of the that early warning system, but just a little bit it touched on. It was actually I mean, it might not have been the Panama Canal or something, but it was still a pretty impressive feat
yeah,
that they were able to get done up there. And like, they had 6 weeks a year when they could work on it or something stupid. I don't remember what it was. Um,
yeah. Dropping
all right,
bulldozers in with helicopters.
Antifu is our geography expert tonight. He is correcting me. I was wrong. It is about 25,000 miles around the world. I was way off. But still, 5,000 miles is 20% of the way around the world, 1/5 of the way around the world. That's still pretty impressive. I wonder, hey, Antifu, since you clearly have the magic Google fingers on this, what is the second longest border in the world? I wonder if it's not Mexico. Uh, what's the second and third longest international borders in the world? That would be interesting to know. I guess the Soviet Union might have, like, maybe the border between China and the Soviet Union might be, or Soviet, you listen to me, dear Lord,
How
Russia.
about, yeah, China and even Mongolia and China would have quite a long border, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, what's this Marcus saying? Canada has Chinese troops doing exercises in Canada. Are you
They
familiar with
were,
this?
yeah, that happened a few years back.
A few years.
They were
They were actually stationed not far from here. And they were here in the winter. So that tells me a couple of things. They're cold weather training. That means to me the Arctic is what their interest is, right? I think China's going to try and get in on Canadian Arctic shoreline territory.
Really?
That's my impression. I feel that in my bones, like kind of like a intuition, like that's going to happen.
um, because I mean the Arctic is only what the United States, Russia, Canada, and Denmark control the entire Arctic border.
Mm-hmm.
China wants it desperately. They want those resources. I think Canada is going to be their back door.
That's a big back door. I mean, that's like such a big back. You know, Canada's like Russia. Like, man, if you were going to invade Canada, you've only got like 3 months to do it, and you got a long way to go. and then things are going to get ugly. You know, I mean, how many nations are there out there that have the training to handle a winter in Canada under active military conflict? That just sounds like a losing fight to me, you know.
Well, maybe for Russia, I guess.
But anywho, all right. So good things are happening in Alberta. It looks like we're going to get this referendum. If nothing else, it shakes up Ottawa and Quebec, the Quebecois. I love that word. I always thought that was the Quebecois. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it's what the Quebecians call themselves in their mongrel French tongue.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter. I'm a little bitter. I'm a little bitter. We're going to get this referendum, and nothing else. It's going to shake up the bad guys where they might. Antifa. The second largest border, I was completely wrong, is between Kazakhstan and Russia, which I would have never gotten. 4,700 miles. I would have never thought it was that long. And then the third largest border is between Argentina and Chile, which makes sense, measuring approximately 4,145 miles long. The problem there is that, did you ever hear the whole story about the Viking who made some sort of agreement with, I think it was someone in England. Yeah, I think it was England. I think this is the mythology about how York got established, actually, where it was Rollo. One of the, and he said, look, I'll give you all this. You just give me enough land to be covered by an ox hide. And whoever was up there at the time was like, oh, sure, whatever, fine. And he took an ox hide and cut it into a really thin string. He just cut it into basically a continuous, and then took all that land, and that's supposedly where the city of York was established. Argentina is kind of that way. It's a country, but they kind of just cut it in one long string. I mean, that 4,000-mile border, that's pretty much the country. that's
half of it's
Argentina.
Chile, I think. Yeah.
Or Chile, whatever.
Which I wonder then, if Alberta separates and becomes its own country, will it have the longest border
with Canada?
Oh yeah. How far is it? How far does it run up both sides?
Ooh,
that's a good question.
That's a pretty big chunk of land when I look at it on the map.
I don't know. I'd say probably 1,000 miles.
Yeah, that wouldn't be. It'd still only be about 2,000, plus whatever the top there is.
Yeah, it'd still be pretty long though.
It'd still be pretty long.
So we'd be bordering China on the north and Canada on the east and west, and then the States on the south.
China in the north. That's pretty funny. You are already out of there in your mind. Oh, China's got the Yukon. We're out. I wonder what the supply lines would be like for China from the Chinese mainland to the Yukon. That would have to be an incredible haul. I wonder if they've got anything that can even make that flight.
Yeah, well, they'd have to make it over Alaska, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they'd have to come over Japan. They'd have to come over Alaska. I mean, that would just be, yeah,
Because they would fly over the pole, right?
I
They
guess
would
there's
fly.
that
They
whole
would fly over the
flies
North
of
Pole.
Canada there. They could come over, but then you got to come so close to like the California coast. I mean, it's that would just be a difficult flight path. I don't know how well you could supply an army from China to the Yukon.
Yeah, it wouldn't be very easy.
But now, of course, I'm skewing back to my American. But think about when China had a toehold in the Panama Canal, or essentially control of the Panama Canal. And then they're going to start, like like I just learned tonight, which I didn't know, start trying to get a toehold up there in the Yukon. That's a classic pincher movement right there. You know, you can squeeze from two sides once you got toeholds in those two locales, because there's nothing in between Panama and the Texas border that could slow them down if they really wanted to do it.
I suppose.
Maybe those
and then I think that now
Our prime minister here has been making all kinds of deals with China lately, so who knows? You know, maybe these troopers that are coming over from China are going to start taking up permanent residence.
Well, China needs oil, just something just awful. I mean, China needs oil like crazy, and you guys got it.
We
Yeah.
we had a pipeline plan to go to the west coast to supply China, and the federal government bought it, planning on finishing it, and they never did. They stopped at the Alberta border, going west to the British Columbia, and then there the native groups blocked it with the environmental stuff. So yeah, so there was another dead end. We can't go west, we can't go east, we can go south if if the states lets us, but that's about it.
Yeah, if we've got the right administration in, but if we've got the wrong idiots in charge of us, can't do that even. That
Yeah.
Keystone Pipeline still, I get so angry when I think about the Keystone Pipeline that I just want to spit. No, that's not what I want to do, but that's what I'm going to say.
All we got to do is, if I'm not mistaken, the pipeline is built all the way up to the U.S. border now. We're just waiting for go ahead there. So, yeah, that would be huge. All of that crude going down to Texas. Yeah.
Yeah. We basically straight down to the refineries and the Gulf. The two countries would be the biggest suppliers of oil in the world. America already is the biggest supplier of oil in the world. And then if we were cooperating with Alberta for everything you guys could pump, because I think you guys have a massive kind of confirmed reserves. I don't remember what's in the ground up there, but I read about it once, and it was a huge amount of oil. You're essentially floating on it, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it's more than Saudi Arabia. It's I lost my train of thought. Yeah, there's a ton of oil. There's a ton of oil sands. Our biggest thing is we don't have a lot of refineries here, so
right.
It's mostly crude that goes out, and then we end up buying gas back.
Right. That's one thing
That's
kind
insane.
of. So
I'm sure the federal government would do everything they could to stop you from building a refinery too, I would imagine.
Well, we do have some refineries. We just, because it's not our main, I guess our main thing is just raw materials. So we're not set up really. So, and there's another thing I think Alberta would do on its own. It would be setting up its own refineries, and therefore we wouldn't have to buy gasoline back from the United States.
Right.
It's not that it's going to make a big difference to you guys because our population isn't that big, but
What is the population up there? Do you know?
it's I think 4.5 million, 5 million.
Oh, that's not nothing.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of things. No federal taxes, no carbon taxes, no GST. No, there'd be all kinds of things. We'd be so free of financial burdens.
Yeah. Yeah, your economy, I'm sure there'd be a little hiccup at first while things got sorted out. But yeah, once I mean you guys would just skyrocket. You'd be like one of those, Middle Eastern city states like Qatar or Kuwait or something,
or
every
like one of
citizen
those
is a
places in
millionaire.
Europe. Yeah, like what is that one in Europe? Not Montenegro, Morocco. One of those. They're completely landlocked, but they have the highest living standard in the world. Luxembourg, maybe, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah, Switzerland too. They have a really high standard of living there, but they're completely landlocked. They don't have the resources we do. So
No, very few countries have the resources Canada does. Period. Canada is just has the potential to be the superpower of the future. I believe that. Uh, my light went out. Sorry. Just with the resources and the frontier and Canada is just an untapped cornucopia of wealth and power, especially if you could get some nuclear going. I know why have nuclear, you got all that oil, but I just think up north, once you start getting closer and closer to the Arctic Circle, I think nuclear maybe becomes but you guys have uranium too and all that stuff. I mean, it's just there's
yes,
no natural resource that Canada isn't just dripping with. Uh,
right, yeah, and it's
Wealth
just
beyond
so
measure.
yeah, it's just laying there in the ground, and it's really a hard country to logistically make work. We don't have a big enough population to really make it a viable country to begin with. So, and then there's a lot of divides, like geographical divides, that make things difficult.
Hmm.
For example, like laying a pipeline in the north, you can't put it in the ground. It's got to be above ground. There's, things like that make it difficult. Same thing when you're going through Eastern Canada, you get into the Canadian Shield, and it's really hard rock. It's not easy to dig through.
Hmm.
There's just, and then there's the mountains, of course, too, which kind of keeps
Yeah.
Alberta and British Columbia apart from each other, but keeps the Liberals in the West Coast away from Alberta. There's only a few
And
mountains.
those are real deal mountains too. Those are not like my little Appalachian mountains I love so much. Those are real mountains.
Well, I've never seen the Appalachian Mountains, so I couldn't really say, but uh, yeah, they're big and rocky.
No, the Appalachians are beautiful and I love them. And it's a real mountain range, but it's a mountain range with the bottom cut out. It's all the peaks are much lower and they're all forested and they're rounded off and you don't get the craggy, rocky stuff. Uh, you find an area without trees in the Appalachians and it's a big deal. We name them. When we find areas without trees, they're named. It's the bald this, the bald that, Trembly bald or that's one near here. They're just not common. Whereas of course you get above was it 6,000 feet? You get above 6,000 feet, and I don't think trees grow that well at all anymore, if I'm not mistaken, or whatever
No,
whatever it is. Some line where trees just don't
there's
grow
nothing.
anymore.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
my understanding, if I remember correctly from school, was that the Appalachian Mountains were more ancient, and they kind
that's
of
what they
worn
say.
down more.
Yeah, I'm a young Earth creationist though, so I don't really buy into all that horseshit. Uh,
Well, I mean, whatever. Let's just say over 12,000 years they were first, and
yeah.
Rockies came 6,000 years later.
I
Whatever.
think that's a really good way to describe them. If you look at them, they look ancient, and like I said, they look rounded and they look worn, and I think that's an accurate way to describe it. But obviously, when they say the planet's been here for 4 billion years, I just roll my eyes and say, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and even now, with the latest scientific instrumentation that they have in space, they're starting to find out they were wrong about a lot of things, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
The more tech they throw at things, they're starting to look at things and going, "This didn't. Our old models of the universe don't make sense anymore."
So
Yeah,
it might all swing back to a young Earth, young universe kind of way too.
So, in some ways, we didn't understand before.
yeah. I think we're
I'm
going to
open
find
to it.
out in the years ahead that we understood nothing about the universe. I'm not a flat earther. You're not going to convince me that the Earth is flat. I'm sorry if anyone in the chat's one of those guys. But I think pretty much everything other than that is still on the table. There's not too many other theories about the universe that I think might not actually be true. I don't think we have eliminated as many ideas as we think we have.
Oh, absolutely. There's just so much there to take into consideration. They're always finding out new things all the time.
Here's the thing. I could go down to the store right now and buy a can of Coca-Cola, take it to a scientist, hand it to him in the most sophisticated lab in the world, and he still can't tell me the formula for Coke. Not the exact formula for Coke. But somehow they want to tell me they know what's happening, something called 14 billion light years away. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. When you can tell me what, Colonel Sanders' 11 secret herbs and spices are, maybe then I'll start thinking what's going on in other galaxies. But until then, shut up.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've got my own theories on all that kind of stuff, but yeah, it's kind of rooted in the science that were presented. So
Yeah, these people just aren't as smart as they think they are. When they
a lot of
tell
them
us
are
we're
smart.
descended from monkeys, like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that one's always.
Boys can be girls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Men can get pregnant. Whatever. Go back to your lab and stop bothering normal people. So, you want to talk about this SSPX stuff or no?
Sure. Yeah. Fire away.
Okay. So, for those of you who are not obsessed with Roman Catholicism the way I am, which is a little weird for a Protestant, SSPX stands for the Society of St. Pius X.
Yes.
I'm just going to hit the history real quick and gloss it over. If you want to correct any of the history I get wrong, feel free, because I'm not an expert. Same goes for you, Mark. And the Society of St. Pius X was founded by this guy. If you know anything about Roman Catholicism, they've got all these little. They're not splinter groups, but they're groups with their own aesthetic and their own focuses. So you got the Jesuits and the Franciscans and the Dominicans and all these groups that have their own little focus and their own devotions and this sort of stuff. And the Society of St. Pius X was founded by this guy. Was he an archbishop, Lefebvre? Was he, or is he just a bishop, or was he an archbishop? I don't remember.
He was an archbishop. Yeah.
Yeah, Archbishop Lefebvre. I think his first name was Michael or Michelle. I don't remember that either. But
Marcel.
and I don't remember. What's that?
Marcel. Yeah.
Marcel. That's what it was. Marcel Lefebvre. And I can't remember where he was out of, but is it somewhere in America or Canada?
No, Archbishop Lefebvre was originally from France, but he served all over the world. His biggest contributions to the church were probably in the 1950s in Africa. He really brought Christianity to a lot of places in Africa, all over the whole continent. So that was probably his biggest achievement. Although now he's more famous for the Society of St. Pius X, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So most of you have probably heard of the Second Vatican Council, Vatican II. which is this kind of, and I believe this was the early '60s, if I'm not mistaken, like '60 through '62, but I might have that wrong. Uh, and and the and Rome, the Pope at the time, whose name I can't remember, but I think it was John somebody, uh, calls a big confabulation, and they want to. I don't think they use the term reform the church because reform has there's some trauma attached to the word reform in Rome, but they wanted to update some things, and they come up with this thing called the Novus Ordo, the new order, and they changed the way Roman Catholics conduct their church services for the for the American Protestant mind. That's how we would think of it. The Mass is is something akin to a Roman church service, and it's this big. What's the right word? I shouldn't be talking too confidently about this because obviously I'm on the outside. To me, it seems like it was pretty controversial in some corners of the Roman Church, uh, and and Archbishop Lefebvre was one of those people who really was was concerned about the changes that come out of the Vatican II Council, the Novus Ordo, and it changed some of the things like the Mass wasn't said in Latin anymore. I think they changed the position of the altar. Uh, was it that the altar that the priest was in between the congregation and the altar, or was the altar in between the congregation and the priest? I don't remember which way it went.
So, well, first of all, that the modern Mass or Novus Ordo liturgy, often cited as being a product of Vatican II. Vatican II didn't create the Novus Ordo. It had some outlines of what they wanted to do to make it more. I don't even know what the right word is. More so people would participate more in it.
Right. They
But it
they
was never.
really wanted to make it a little bit more Protestant like, more
Yes,
vernacular.
definitely. Well, and if you actually read the documents of Vatican II, there's no directives in there at all that say what the Mass should be. That was all concocted later.
Right.
As for the altar part of it, so traditionally, the altar is up against the wall, and the priest, his back is to the congregation. That's the traditional way that's been done for hundreds and hundreds of years. That change was definitely done to kind of appease Protestants because I think a lot of Protestant churches are like that. They have the altar kind of turned around where the priest is kind of facing the congregation.
Yeah.
That attitude or that change of attitude was kind of, it's one of the key things. It's not by itself bad. What it is it shows it's taking, we're all facing God and the priest is our leader, offering up the Mass and kind of making it into a community thing. And that's kind of the objection about that part of it, if that makes
Well, I
sense.
think the real this is my interpretation from the outside, so I'm submitting this to you for your approval. When I hear people talk about it, it seems like the real concern is it's just another in a series of compromises with modernity that people just aren't comfortable with. And
Yeah.
if you had gone to most Roman Catholics and made that change by itself, unattached with all these other changes that were going on at the time and the liberalization of everything and the breakdown of all kinds of morality. This is the '60s. We've got the sexual revolution starting, the pill, socialism is on the rise, teenagers are rioting in the streets. I mean, it's just a crazy time. And suddenly, the Roman church, which is supposed to be this symbol of of absolute stability and certainty, starts suddenly making all these compromises at the same time, and it just freaks everyone the hell out. I mean, even Protestants are like, "Whoa, what are you guys doing here? Hold on, we like to criticize you, but we don't actually, want you changing. I mean, don't jump on board with these nutsoids." And of course, we had our own nutsoids jumping on board too. It's just not a. But
Yeah,
anyway,
and I think
but so
what
that's
what the
my
argument.
interpretation of it, of why it struck some people so bad. That there's all these other things going on at the same time, and this just feels like one more thing, on top of everything else. And
Yeah,
sort of the suppression of the Latin mass, and you saw like the habits, and the nuns' habits sort of change at this time a lot too. And I think the priestly vestments change a lot. I think you get less of the smells and bells sort of stuff, uh, and
yeah,
you start seeing some more modern style of music creeping in, and then you start seeing the stuff that we all had to deal with. I'll tell you a story. I grew up in the Pentecostal movement. Not a Pentecostal anymore, but I grew up in that movement, uh, and it was a lot of fun. But the Pentecostal movement has this next in Roman Catholicism. You guys have the charismatic renewal and all that, but when you're talking to a Pentecostal and you talk about a charismatic or the charismatic movement, it means something a little different to us. And it was like the really crazy Pentecostals. Like these people were just insane. These are the people who were renting airplanes so they could go have prayer services up in the sky so they could be closer to the prince of the powers of air type stuff. And one of these
mhm,
charismatic churches, yeah, a lot of the name it claim it prosperity gospel churches would be charismatics, uh, and one of them had a stripper for Jesus for a while. There's this woman who, you have the very uh, emotive worship services where everyone's babbling in tongues and waving their hands and falling on the ground. The Benny Hinn style stuff. That's what we think of when we talk about. Thanks, Les. Tell Miss Sharon we said hi to. That's what the charismatic movement means to the Pentecostals, and we had that. Yeah, we had this one. It was somewhere out west, like Colorado, or one of those. One of these charismatic mega churches had this woman who decided her ministry was to strip for Jesus in the middle of the worship service. I'm sure it drove you know men to church in record numbers for a little while. But this is
yeah.
just the kind of stuff that was going on. Just stupidity, uh, all throughout the '60s, '70s, and '80s. Uh, uh, and it feels like to me, Archbishop Lefebvre was a reaction. I would say he was reactionary in a way to all those changes, right? And he wants to
Definitely.
he wants to keep the traditional Latin mass. He wants to keep the the majesty of the mass. He wants the mass to be, think Gregorian chant type stuff. He wants all the solemnity and the majesty and the awe inspiring uh portions. Someone's message got held for review. Les or Antifu, if you don't mind jumping on that and see what's going on. uh Unless it's really egregious, go ahead and approve it. And Lefebvre, he wants this stuff. He wants to maintain this stuff. And my impression, and again, you're there, so I'm presenting that he wasn't really wanting to rebel against Rome so much as he just wanted to preserve this alternative form of the mass. Is that incorrect?
No, that's correct.
I think what he saw back during Vatican II was where it could lead in the future. And at first, he just wanted to retire because after Vatican II was over, he was already at retirement age. So he rented a house somewhere, I think near Rome. And within a few months of the new system being slowly implemented in the church, some seminarians came knocking at his door asking if he would teach them, because where they were going into the newer seminaries, now they felt they were being taught things that were wrong or that were leading to the same things that the Archbishop himself was thinking would happen in the future. So he began training the seminarians, and I don't think he intended it to be a long-term thing. It just kind of grew, out of his control. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he was looking at things and going, look, like there's a certain amount of respect due when you go into a church. You shouldn't be rolling around on the ground and making all kinds of noise, and this is what the modern way the Novus Ordo was starting to do. I know, I was there. I went to the Novus Ordo Mass until I was in my mid 20s, I guess, and then when I got married, I converted or changed, converted. I went to the traditional Mass, but so he was seeing all
So,
of this. He was seeing the potential of where all this could go in the future, and I think it concerned him a lot. I don't think it was, like you say, an intended rebellion. Um, I think in the 1970s, even he had applied to get like proper
right.
seminary approved by Rome,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to take all the steps and make sure it was done properly. And of course, they come down there, they send some liberal cardinals to look over his seminary, and they would write up things that weren't true, and then things would get hung up, and nothing would ever move forward. You've got to realize that there's liberals in the church too, right? Liberal cardinals, liberal bishops, priests. They've slowly been. This has been going on for a long time. Communism, socialism has gotten everywhere, and the church was one of the
Liberation
places.
theology.
Yeah, and definitely that was one of the places they decided to attack in the 30s and 40s. So by the time the 1960s roll around, there's already some of these infiltrators, communist infiltrators in the church that are now bishops that are participating at Vatican II. And uh, so there's where things start getting muddied. We don't know who or what or when or why. There's a lot of bishops and a lot of cardinals, but he did what he did, and I don't think, yeah, like you say, I don't think it was like out of a spirit of rebelliousness or anything. It was he wanted to
So,
hold on
so
to.
the the sort of the showdown comes when Lefebvre gets diagnosed with cancer and he's dying. And I think
Right.
what Protestants have to understand, because I'm assuming I'm talking to mainly Protestants, uh, is that Rome and Eastern Orthodox and a few other Anglicans and whatnot, they apostolic succession is a really big deal. And in order to be a priest, you have to be ordained by a bishop, a properly ordained bishop. And the bishop himself has to be properly ordained by a previous bishop. And so Lefebvre could ordain priests because he himself was an archbishop, but he was now about to die. He had cancer and he was very old at this point, and he's about to die. And he wants to ensure that the society can continue to ordain priests. And so
Exactly.
he actually asks Rome to ordain some bishops for the society. Uh,
That's right.
and and Rome hems and haws. And I can't remember if they said no or if they were just dragging their feet so hard. Lefebvre Lefebvre gets concerned and he ordains 5 bishops. Uh,
4 bishops. Yeah.
if 4 bishops, uh, big huge deal, blows up. I think a couple people get excommunicated. I think Lefebvre and all the bishops actually end up getting excommunicated. And then the new pope, I think it was JP, John Paul II, kind of walks it all back. They excommunicate these guys. They're trying to keep it from going into a schism. Uh,
That was Benedict the 16th that did that. Yes.
uh,
JP2 was the
oh
one who
yeah,
excommunicated
Benedict.
him, and then Benedict was the one who revoked it. And the other thing Benedict did while he was Pope was he released a document called Summorum Pontificum, which opened up the liberty of any priest that wanted to could say the Latin Mass. And suddenly priests all over the place were saying the Latin Mass. And then when Francis became Pope, he started pulling that back in, uh, forbidding anybody new learning it. And now we've got Leo the 14th, and nobody really knows where his stance on anything is. He's just kind
Yeah,
of.
no one knows what he's doing. But all this
And
has
so,
come to a head again because all of those
yes.
bishops that Lefebvre appointed, I believe, are now you're down to just one, if I'm not mistaken. There's only one
Two,
left.
there's two.
There's two left, and they're
Yeah.
wanting to appoint new bishops.
Yes.
Uh, and and this is a big deal because the Society for Saint Pius is growing, if I'm not mistaken. It's a sort of a dynamic movement, and it's sort of moving ahead. I think I've read also that the birth rates in the society are much higher than the birth rates in the rest of the Roman Church. That there's just a future for this thing, and they want some new bishops. And Rome is hemming and hawing again and won't give them to them. And the society has said, look, come July, we're appointing new bishops no matter what. And it
Yep.
has elicited something of a crisis. And okay, so all that was background. I'm sorry, that was a lot of bleh coming from someone who shouldn't be blehing on something he doesn't really know about. What is your take as a I I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm assuming that you consider yourself a faithful Roman Catholic, and also uh, how would you describe your relationship to the SSPX? Or
My relationship to the SSPX.
yeah,
I would describe my relationship as this: I am merely a Roman Catholic, and I choose to go to the Mass of the Society of St. Pius X. However, if they weren't there, I would try and find something as respectful as possible wherever I could. Um, Meaning, if I had to drive to 2 hours to another city, I would do it. Or if the priest at the Novus Ordo was really good, like had a really good, lots of smells and bells, like you say, I would probably go to it. If there was no society here, but I think the society is the best option. So that's my relationship with it right there.
so
I'm not
would
personally
it be fair to assume that you think Rome should ordain bishops for the society?
100%. Yeah.
100%. That would be your preferred outcome, is if the society in Rome could stay in a close
Yeah, not
communion and
be
stay the way, because it's not uncommon. I mean, there's a bunch of different. What's the right word to say this? Like there's the Byzantine Catholics, and there's a bunch of little enclaves like that. And like the Byzantine Catholic priests can be married. It's like there's
yeah,
significant differences in some of
yeah.
these groups that are all in communion with Rome. I'm confused as to why Rome won't let the SSPX be one of these groups and still be in communion.
And a lot of us are confused too. We don't know why exactly, but it seems like they want to appease everybody except the traditionalists. We're too old school, I guess. Our way of thinking is too rigid, as Pope Francis so pointed out when he was still alive. Where our thinking is too rigid. Um, of course, we know what thinking was like. He liked to bring
Yes.
idols into the church, so uh, yeah. So I mean, my relationship is just simply that. Like, I'm not a member of the Society of St. Pius X. I don't have like a membership card or anything like that. I'm just a Catholic. This is where I decide to go to church. Is all. That's
So this
pretty
might be
simple.
an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And
Okay.
if you don't want to answer this, this is fine because it is a little, especially from an outsider. If Rome just came out and just made like, you know, the SSPX are all raging heretics. They are in total schism. You cannot attend them and be, a faithful son of the church. What have you thought about what you would do in that case?
Yeah, I mean, this has already been done once. Um, well, maybe not that directly, I guess, but you see, I believe that you have to take there's certain considerations to take when the voice in Rome is speaking. It doesn't mean it's always right.
Mm-hmm.
This is what a true Catholic should understand: is that the Pope, just because he opens his mouth, doesn't mean it's always true. Same thing with the members of the hierarchy. They could be serving an agenda. You have to really, and I think this in this day and age, and I think you'd agree with me because they're so dark and troubling these days. Generally, you have to be able to think for yourself, take your old catechism, your Bible, study, you know, like get to know your faith because they can say things. They might not be true though. I mean, they can say you're schismatic. Well, I'm going to say prove that. How do you prove that I'm schismatic? Because I'm not, like I said, I'm not a card carrying member of the society. I just choose to go there for mass.
Mhm.
It's okay. Like, for example, our local Novus Ordo church would be fine if I went to a Lutheran service. If I decided my wife, let's say I decided I'd marry an Anglican, um,
Mhm.
and I wanted to go there, their local Novus Ordo priest would say, fine, that's fine, you can do that. But if
Mhm.
I said I want to go to the Society of St. Pius X, they'd say, no, you can't. And I've actually been in
Yeah.
conversations with priests who've actually said this to me. Well, this
Yeah.
makes no sense. How can you say
Yeah.
that? So if they're
This
saying
is
things
something
like
I've
that,
noticed. Yeah, inside my own, I'm a Torah keeper, and like, I have a few ideas about Torah keeping that are slightly eccentric from other Torah keepers, and and yeah, and these are tiny little things, but when you're the in group and and the rest of the group thinks you're being disloyal to the group, the backlash is just vicious. And it's always, the I can't remember who said this, but like the more minute the disagreement is, the more vicious the argument. Because it's like, no, how can you disagree with me? We're supposed to be on the same side. You're a traitor, not just an outside adversary. So it makes sense to me. You touched on something, uh, and if we want to come back to this, we can. This topic might, but this is one of my hobby. This is one of the things I'm really focused on right now, and you just touched on it. Is that I am just convinced that the number one most important skill going forward is just knowing what you believe despite all evidence. Like, you just have to be able to be confident in your beliefs, and you have to tell everyone else to go screw themselves because they can manufacture any evidence they want now. With the AI and the deep fakes and all this stuff, they can just they can manufacture something that we as normal everyday people that we just can't argue with, that we're not going to be able to prove as false. And if we do not know what we believe and believe it despite all evidence, then we're going to be like the that uh, I don't know if we're going to get into all that anti-who, because that cuts a lot of different ways. Uh, you can look at that question, Carr, and see if you want to answer it. Unfortunately, we would have to answer the same charges on our side right afterward, so it's kind of a wash as far as I'm concerned. Uh, but they're going to be able to. You see some of these drone swarms they can do now, and the shows they can do in the air with the drone swarms. That's only going to get
yeah,
better and better and better. And it's going to be like that stupid Spider-Man movie where did you see the Spider-Man movie Far From Home?
no,
The
I've
villain in that movie is called Mysterio, and he has all these drones with camera projectors on them, and he just projects all this stuff in the sky because you can't tell the difference. And it's all just smoke and mirrors, fake stuff. And we're coming up to that point where that is a reality. And they are going to be able to manufacture evidence. And if you can't just stand firm in your beliefs and say, I'm sorry, I see what my lion eyes tell me, but I can't trust my lion eyes anymore. I have to be able to trust myself. And that is a scary, scary, scary reality. And many of us will be swayed by evidence that is not evidence. Uh, and
and I have
and
to add that you not only know yourself, know your faith, but challenge it too. Get to
yeah,
like You know what I mean? Like if you feel something that doesn't feel right, like look into it, challenge it. Don't be afraid, because you're only going to get led to the truth. So
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're just, it's like, it's like jewelers. You can take a piece of jewelry into a jeweler, and he could swap it out with anything. He could give you back anything he wanted, and you just wouldn't know, and you couldn't know. Uh, and and that's what is going to start happening with our belief systems. People are going to show up with unbelievably convincing evidence about just crazy things, and we are going to have to be able to say, I see it, I can't explain it, and I still reject it. And that's going to be the number one. Being an ignorant hidebound uh lullard is about to be the greatest skill a man could possess.
I would agree. Um, yeah, it's just time to get back to the books. I mean, the greatest enemy of the modern man's religious life is doom scrolling.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I hate to
But
admit it, but
I am running out of battery power here, it looks like. So just warning you.
uh-oh, we're about to lose our Canadian correspondent. All right, well, we'll just talk until you need to go, or until your camera uh dadgummit. I cut this bad son of a gun. It's gonna burn weird all night now. See if I can fix it.
Oh, you got to run?
So uh, all right, so while we still got you and we can still have a conversation, we have had 3 terrorist attacks on American soil this last week. Uh, Mark wants to talk about Iran, and we're going to touch on it. All right, well, let's just talk about Iran. We'll just go there. What as an outsider looking at this from the north, what are you seeing in the Iran situation?
I'm seeing. I, I don't know if I agree with Trump supporting Israel. I think my honest opinion is that the state of Israel should be just turned to glass. And I just feel like that entire area has just been nothing but a forever war since Israel has been there. And I don't know. I kind of wish the West would stay out of it. That's my take on it. Really, all it's doing is just making a bunch of bankers in London, you know, they're controlling the flow of oil through that strait there. That's 1/5 of the world's oil every day that's being going through that strait. I feel like it's just a big, the elites at the top controlling where supplies go. That's my thoughts on it, really.
So this is going to betray my evangelical background, uh, but I am fully in support of the Zionist project, uh, and there's 2 different avenues I take on this. But I guess let's stay on the Iran thing right now before we get off on the deep theological issues of Israel and Judah and all that stuff. I don't ascribe to any version of replacement theology. I think God's promises to Israel, to the people of Israel, are still in place. So those promises don't fall to the nation of Israel. However, the nation of Israel is populated by a bunch of people who those promises do uh, fall to. And when I look at history and I see anyone who's ever tried to uh, eradicate Israel, it has never gone well for the people who tried to eradicate the people of not the modern nation state of Israel, but the people who make it up, the Jews, for lack of a better term, even though I don't think that's a very descriptive term. Anyone who's ever set themselves up against the Jews, though the Jews are still here and those people are not. And to me that is very, 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 very prescient. That is not a historical anomaly in my opinion. But
Well, this is
anyway,
true.
let's talk. Yeah, where's Haman? Yeah, Haman got hung on his own gallows. Where are the Nazis? Well, you know, God is very willing to uh, punish the Jews when He's ready to punish the Jews harshly. I mean, He will harshly punish the Jews when He wants to punish the Jews. But then it's like every time He's done, the people He used to do it do not come to a good end. and there's actually some Old Testament prophecies about this in Isaiah and Ezekiel that pretty much say that same thing. That he'll send down this army or that army, and he's going to, destroy his people and punish his people. But when he's done, he prophesies that yes, then he's going to turn on the people that he used to do that and utterly destroy them. But let's set aside the religious stuff for just a minute because that could go all over the place. As
Yep.
far as just like this America first thing and no wars and suddenly we're in a Middle Eastern war. It I'm full MAGA. I'm 100% on board with the America First project. I've said this before on on the on the channel that I have to be very careful that I am prone to hero worship. Uh, and I've probably done it now. And even I'm a little cautious about this because it feels like, man, we were told no more wars, and suddenly there's war,
Well,
and
I
it's
kind
a
of felt
Middle
like this
Eastern
was
war,
coming. I felt like
and
this was coming ever since Palestine launched that attack back in 22 or 3 or whatever it was.
24, I
Uh,
think.
24 was it? Okay.
I think so.
Ever since then, I knew the United States was going to get involved eventually. I knew that Israel wasn't going to give up, and they were going to push into Iran. I just knew that. Okay, we had the Ukraine and Russia going on over here. I know that Iran's a partner with Russia. They're part of the BRICS
Mm-hmm.
nations. It makes sense that these BRICS nations are going to be fighting against NATO in the West. Um, what's going to be next? Is it going to be South America? What do you think?
Well, I mean, we've already done Venezuela. Brazil. I think Cuba is probably on the chopping block. They pretty much said as much. They've said, "Oh, Cuba's finished." That probably means that there's going to be some sort of intervention in Cuba. I think the Iran thing had to happen. I agree with you. Iran has attacked America too many times. It's killed too many of our soldiers, hundreds and hundreds. I think going all the way back to the Beirut bombing in '84, I think it was, when they killed like 234 Marines, I believe, with a truck bomb. I think it was at the Beirut embassy. Actually, my unit that I served with lost Marines in that bombing. Obviously, it was before my time, but if you want peace, if you want no wars, then the Ayatollahs had to go because they were just pushing and funding all these wars.
Well, it's either
But
you
at
get
the
rid of you have to get rid of the Islamic world, or you have to get rid of, I don't know. There's the Ottoman Empire. I mean, they kind of kept the peace in the Middle East for hundreds of years.
yeah.
But then when you start introducing a new or another religious group into the middle of that, it's just going to cause problems. It was intended to be like that from the start, I think. It seems like all the pieces for World War III were put into place at the end of World War I, maybe.
Oh yeah. I think this. I mean, honestly, man, I say all this goes back to the French Revolution. Like all
Yep.
of this stuff was pretty much set in motion by the French Revolution. And Napoleon comes out of the French Revolution and he does all of his stupidity all across Europe. Uh, I do not think Napoleon was a genius. I think he was a murderous psychopath that caused the vast majorities of the problems in the modern world. And the only reason he was so successful is because he was just willing to kill so many people. That he was like the first modern dictator that just was like, okay, everyone dies until I get my way.
Have you ever watched there's a TV series called Sharp? Sharp's Rifles, starring Sean Bean. I think it's a British production, but it takes place during the Napoleonic Wars, and Sean Bean plays a lieutenant or captain of the first rifle unit during the Napoleonic Wars. So it's a really interesting series. You might like it.
Well, yeah. So that was the first rifle. Here I go, America. So the first rifle companies come out of the American Revolution. So the first British rifle company was called Ferguson's Rifles, and Ferguson actually died in North Carolina at a place called Kings Hill, not too far from here. I've toured the battlefield. It's an interesting battle. But there was the famous Kentucky long rifle and the Pennsylvania rifles. I can't remember the name of their leader. He was one of the bigger generals in the Revolutionary War. But that was kind of like the first organized rifle companies. I think there were two of them, and incredibly effective. And they were executed on site when they were captured because of how effective they were, and sort of how at the time it was kind of scandalous because they could pick guys off from 200 yards, and they would. Some poor British regular would just be standing his post, and they just get blasted from 200 yards away.
Yeah.
And so coming out of that, Britain, who Anglo-Saxons superpowers always saying, well, that works, give me some of that. They instantly start forming their own rifle companies, and the Sharp comes out of that. And I want to say, don't quote me on this, either him or a family member ends up in America later on and develops a Sharps rifle that gets used. The Sharps rifle is kind of a famous rifle that gets used in the Civil War, the American Civil War. Then, and it's one of the first repeating carbines to see kind of widespread military service.
Interesting.
But that might be, I'm pretty sure that connection is there, but I might be mistaken on that connection. But I think it is. So I would probably really enjoy that show. First off, Sean Bean is just a great actor. He's good in everything he's ever been in, even though he dies in everything he's ever been in.
It's the only series he doesn't die in, and there's actually a moment in one of the shows where they use that like as a pun, that I've never been killed before, something like that.
So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. That would be good. All right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, our consensus on Iran is that we're both concerned.
Yes.
What from an outsider's perspective, what do you think victory looks like?
Victory?
In Iran.
In Iran. I don't think Iran stands a chance. I think that there's going to be a victory once the United States is involved. That's it. They'll fight. I don't know how long it'll be, but I don't think it's going to take too long before Iran becomes Persia again.
Yeah. So context for everything I'm about to say is last weekend, when you'd first contacted me about maybe doing this, I was in Parris Island, South Carolina, which is Marine Corps boot camp for my son's graduation from Marine Corps boot camp. So I've got a boy on active duty in the Corps, which I'm very proud of, obviously, as a Marine myself. I got a brother on active duty. I got another son who's about to be on active duty. So this is not academic for me. This is not other people's sons who are fighting this war, who would be fighting this war. I think that the Iran thing is a necessary war. Iran has been threatening America for 50 years, almost my whole life, since 1979. I was born in 75. Uh, and, maybe it hasn't been a credible threat up till now, but it's starting to become a credible threat, Once they've got missiles and nuclear weapons, if someone's threatening to kill you and you hear they're going to buy a gun, you've got to.
Yes. Yeah.
So, like I said, Iran has killed hundreds of American civilians. It tried to, assassinate our president twice now. Iran has declared war on America time and time and time again. I don't think the question should be why, but I think the legitimate question is why now. We haven't reacted up until now. I think Mike has just articulated my position. And so I think it's a legitimate question for everyone to now say, okay, they've been doing all of these things for decades. Why are you responding now? And that's the question I have. Why now? Are we sure we're going to keep no invasion? I do not want to rebuild that country. I don't want to control that country. I don't care what they do after this, as long as they have no capacity for 10 years to be a pain in my ass again. I don't want to have to think about that country for a decade. To me, that's victory. If we have 10 years where Iran is not causing a single problem on the world stage, then it's overwhelming victory as far as I'm concerned. I would be okay, and I might even prefer it if we did, and maybe not even America. I'm not a big fan of multilateral operations, but if we got some kind of multilateral group up right after I said no invasion, I'm about to contradict myself. If we took away that island, Fark Island, which I didn't even know existed until just recently, I think if we took away that island from Iran's control and put it under some kind of international control, that would probably be a good idea. Because if you look at the map, that island is right there at the narrowest part of the Strait of Hormuz. And I think if Iran controls that island, they just have too much control over the
Tankers.
whole thing. Yeah. But if we're going to occupy any land at all in the Iranian mainland, then I think it's just the worst mistake Trump could possibly make. If we can't blow it up from the air, maybe one or two, here I go again, mission creep, maybe one or two special forces raids here and there when there's some, real high value thing, you've really got to make sure it's gone. But that's it, and get in, get out. If we're still doing this in 3 weeks, something's gone massively wrong.
I would
Mike
agree.
says, I'm just going to read this quote. Trump seems to be working a multi-layered plan for world peace. I'm willing to give Trump space and not criticize till later. That's where I'm at. I am cautiously hopeful that he has looked at this thing and said, if I really don't want to be fighting a broader war, I've got to do, this now to tamp down a broader war later. And I am hoping that's what this is. So far, he has only let me down once. And that once, I don't really blame him for, because he said he would end the Ukraine war day one, and that hasn't happened yet. And yes. I don't think that's his fault. I do have to admit that was something he said that he did not do. But Anywho,
Well, I don't know. I think that things are just going to keep escalating. Um, I think they're going to. I don't know. You got a lot of military kids. You should get up here to Alberta. We need
yeah,
you.
but
We can start
I've
the
had
United
three now.
Forces of Alberta, UFA.
Well, one of my daughters served in the Air Force, and then I have the son in the Corps, and the second son on his way to the Corps, and I've got several more sons who are headed for active military service. I have 8 sons total. My youngest boy I was blessed with has Down syndrome, so he won't be able to serve. But I wouldn't be shocked if his 7 brothers didn't serve. And like I've already had one daughter serve. Uh, so now it might not happen. There's 1 or 2 of them there that might have different talents and different callings. I'm not putting on that they have to, but I think it's highly likely.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, I think I'll for sure have at least 2 more. Yeah.
I've only got 2 sons, and I wouldn't ask them to join the Canadian Armed Forces for anything.
I actually asked the 2 boys who are joining now were old enough to join under COVID, and I asked them not to join during that period,
Is that
just
because of
because
the
they were forced.
forcing injections or whatever, or
Yeah, because
vaccines? I mean,
they forced that shot on my daughter. She resisted a really long time. And they finally just made her life so miserable because they restricted her to her barracks. They restricted her to her room. She wasn't allowed to go to the chow hall. I mean, it was just awful what they were doing to the poor girl. And she finally gave in, even though she was prone to blood clots. Like she has a diagnosed medical condition where she's prone to blood clots. And they still were like, oh, we don't care. And I was so deeply betrayed by that. That I went to the 2 boys who were, both. My one son actually almost made it into Annapolis. The Naval Academy. Uh, he had gone pretty far into that process. Didn't end up making it, but that's how serious he was. And I asked them both. I think it would be a bad idea to join right now, and they agreed. And so both of them are joining now. That the leadership has changed, and that it's a better time to serve. I just didn't. There's things worth risking your sons for, and the Biden administration wasn't it. And we didn't know where the country was going at that point. You know, the one caveat I have to that, the one thing that gives me pause, is that when you are the enlisted military, when you are the warrior class, that is a major check on your elites. They are 100% dependent on the men with guns, and when you
yes.
are the men with guns, they at least have to factor that into their calculations. And that's the one reason why I would say, even if you're not 100% comfortable with your government, if there's any way to reconcile it with your conscience, it's probably still a good idea for our young men to serve. There comes a point where you can't anymore, and I don't know where that point is. Everyone's going to have to choose that for themselves. But up until the very last moment where our young men can no longer serve with a clear conscience, I do think they should serve, because that makes us dangerous. That makes us the people with the training. That makes us the people with the inside knowledge. You know, the warrior, the Praetorian Guard. It came to a point in the Roman Empire where the Praetorian Guard was picking the emperor, because
Yeah.
they had to keep those military men on side. So it's a hard thing. I served with the Canadian military a couple of times, uh, and this was in the '90s, mid '90s, late '90s, and it was a mixed bag. There were some parts about that was really really good, and then there were some times when I really had to question the leadership. But the individual soldiers I worked with were, I would go so far as to say, top notch. They were They are far better than, say, the Italians and the Greeks and the Spaniards that I trained with, uh, and the French. That was the French were just insane, and even the Germans didn't impress me. The Of all the militaries we served with, the only ones who impressed me were I was fine with the Canadians. The Poles, believe it or not, were joining NATO at that time, and the Poles were top notch. They were really, really good. And then the British Royal Marines, they really felt like they were. Now it's a much smaller. There's only like 4,000 of them in the whole British military. But when we worked with the British Royal Marines, it really felt like we were dealing with peers. They would have been equal to us as American Marines, and not just because of the name. I mean, they were pretty good.
Yeah, things. I guess the Canadian soldiers are, they have to deal with no equipment or poor equipment and undersupplied. I remember hearing a story during, I guess it was in the Yugoslavia conflict, where Canadian soldiers were going into these city conflicts, and were not permit. They were so undersupplied they couldn't even really carry ammunition, or they were prevented from carrying ammunition, or keeping their
Oh wow.
firearms loaded, or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly because it was in 91 or 92 when that happened, but it was a big deal. We just don't have, our budgets never get to the military. They always go to, funding abortion in Africa or something instead.
Yeah.
So, we've got 80-year-old submarines and tanks from World War II. Well, not that bad, I guess, but it's probably from the 50s, or 60s. The Leopard tank was good at one time. I don't know if it is anymore, but
So it was the Leopard 2. I was in the 90s, and I actually was in the infantry, but my specialty was anti-tank. I was an anti-tank missile crewman. And so like the Leopard 2 in the 90s was still a frontline, top tier main battle tank at that time. I do not know what's happened since then. But when I was interacting with the Canucks, it would have been 97, and we were in Haiti, and we didn't have any tanks down there. And the impression I got was that the individual soldiers were good, but they had some questionable leadership. The thing I remember the most was we were patrolling one day, and we passed a Canadian patrol, and we were mounted and they were on foot. So we were in Humvees, and they were stopped on the side of the road, and they were surrounded by Haitians. And it wasn't combat, but it was one step below that, or maybe not just one step. It was a tense situation. But
crowd control.
we would get attacked by the Haitians in these low grade hit and run attacks. So we stopped just to make sure they were okay. And an officer, some kind of junior officer, came over and said, "Oh yeah, we're interacting with, we're winning hearts and minds." He didn't say that, but that's what he meant. And what they were doing was they had an M249 saw down on the ground, and they had pulled it apart, and they were showing the Haitians how it worked. And they had probably 50, 60 people around them, all learning how to use a saw. And the very next week, Canadian patrol got jumped, and they stole the saw from them. So that was kind of my my impression, that we had some decent soldiers who were hampered by some silly ideas.
Yeah.
They weren't as bad as the French, though. The French who were there, there's no joke. The Haiti had been a French colony, and so the French there felt like they had this special connection with the Haitians, and they felt very comfortable moving around out in the general population for some reason. I do not know why, because the evidence did not support their thesis. And it happened several times where these Frenchmen, in their off-duty hours, they were crazy about bicycle riding, and they'd go in their little spandex on their bicycles and go riding around Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Uh, and I mean, every time they'd get jumped, their bikes would get stolen, they'd get stripped naked, and just they'd show up at our front gate bleeding naked, saying the Haitians stole our bikes again. Like, why the hell are you out there again? What is wrong with you people? But my favorite story about the French, it happened in Bosnia. The Haiti mission was a UN mission, and I learned all my hatred for globalism on that UN mission in Haiti. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Uh, in Bosnia, it was a NATO mission, and it was slightly less crazy, but only slightly less crazy. It's funny, actually. Right before we went live on this stream, I was messaging back and forth with an old Marine Corps buddy who was on that deployment with me, and we were actually talking about this exact deployment I'm about to tell you about, a different aspect of it. But we had convoyed from Albania, I think, somewhere in the Med. We had ported somewhere in the Med, and we convoyed all the way up into Bosnia. And we were staying at this base at an airport in Sarajevo. Services for the base, including the chow hall. And the chow hall was unbelievable. Dude, I mean, probably the classiest restaurant I've ever eaten at in my life was this French military chow hall. Tables heaped with all these different kinds of bread. I still can't. I mean, it looked like a photo shoot for an ad for a bread company. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of loads of all these different types of bread. Just giant salad bars, and they were all in like zigzag patterns and set up beautifully, like some kind. It was insane. And then the other thing they controlled was the shower tents. For some reason, the French controlled the shower tents. And the only time I ever saw a Frenchman pick up a rifle in my life was when all of us Marines went to use the shower tents. And for some reason, there was a Frenchman in the shower tent with a rifle watching us all take showers. It was the most French thing I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what he was doing in there. I don't know what he was guarding us from, but he was guarding us while we took showers. He was smoking a cigarette in the shower tent, holding the submachine gun.
Oh, he must have lost a
Okay,
bet or
dude,
something.
whatever. But yeah, the Canadians. The other thing I remember about there was just this one senior enlisted Canadian, and I don't know what the rank structure was, but he struck me as some kind of like what we would call a staff NCO, a higher up level enlisted man, and he was
Sergeant.
just sergeant something. Yeah, it would be like a staff sergeant for us, maybe E6 or above. And he was and this man was truly like, he wasn't just putting this on. This wasn't the inter service rivalry, that we all like to do. He was genuinely concerned about the state of the American military. He was a little mad, like he was insulted because our rifles, if we dropped them at 60 below, the furniture would break. He was like, how can you have a military where if you drop your rifle at 60 below degree weather, the buttstock will break? That is not I was like, dude,
that's not a good thing. No.
degrees below, we're calling your dumb ass. I'm sorry. Marine Corps out, brother. we don't do that shit. But he was very concerned that the defense of the Republic rested on a rifle that couldn't sustain negative 60-degree weather. Like, no, that's no, Sergeant. That is not a problem. You will not see this Marine in that weather.
Hopefully not.
Maybe they fixed that problem since then, but at the time, apparently, if you dropped an M16A2 in negative 60-degree weather, it was so cold the rifle's buttstock would shatter.
Yeah, I have no idea about that. I had one friend that was in the Canadian military, and he said they did cold training in the Arctic. And what was it he said? They jumped out of out of a helicopter, and it was minus 105 or something like that. I don't even know how that machinery was running in that, but he said as soon as you spit, it was frozen before it hit the ground. I don't know. I've never
I'm
seen
sorry,
anything
there's no
like
threat up there. There's nothing to fight in negative 60-degree weather or negative 100-degree
Well,
weather, except the 100-degree weather. That's all. The
except,
only thing to fight up there is the cold, and it will do the
yeah,
job for you.
yeah,
Oh, that's insane. You
yeah.
people are crazy.
Well, I've never seen that cold
Negative
before.
100 degrees.
Maybe I've seen negative 60 once or twice, but
Mm.
it doesn't happen that often.
I've never seen negative 0 degrees temperature. I don't think I've ever seen 0 degree temperature, but I know I've never seen negative zero. The coldest I can ever remember it being was 6 degrees. And that was insane. I mean, it was just an insane anomaly. And I don't even remember exactly where I was. I don't think that was here in Georgia. But somewhere in the last 50 years, I remember one time seeing a low of 60 and going, what the hell?
Yeah, I'd be sitting outside right now smoking and drinking too, but it's too damn cold out.
Oh, dude, I'm in a jacket, and it's probably only 55 degrees low tonight. It's not that cold, but
Oh, t-shirt
my
weather, yeah.
ridiculous Southern bud has got a padded jacket on. I'm wishing I had some
That's
firewood.
amazing
I'd
what we
fire
get
up the
used
wood
to, though.
stove.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
I probably would, if
yeah,
I went
it
down
really
there,
is.
I probably would melt in the summertime.
Yeah. So our here's another little interesting theory to run by you. Our summertime temperatures have been moderating a little bit lately. In the past, hit July, you were going to be 95 plus every day, through August into early September. And the humidity was going to be 80, 90%. Just horrific humidity. Here lately, we haven't been getting out of the low 90s. And the humidity hasn't been quite as bad. I don't know, maybe I'm just aging and the heat hits me differently. I don't know. It hasn't been as grueling as it has been in times past. I can remember times as a kid when you just couldn't sleep at night. It was just so hot and so humid and sticky. It was just you couldn't sleep. And I don't remember that happening for a long time. But have you heard about the solar grand minimum? Are you up on this conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
That's not even a conspiracy theory.
Well, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory, but the solar grand minimum, we've already passed the minimum, haven't we? Like in the
Well, so I
1600s or
think
something.
yeah, but allegedly it's coming around again. Because it's supposed to be on like
Yeah.
this 450, 500-year cycle. And
Mhm.
allegedly we're coming back up on another one of those. That was called the Maunder minimum. And that was when like the Thames River froze over in London. And that was when North America, like New England and Canada, did not have a single calendar month for a while where there wasn't sub-freezing temperatures. They called it like the year with no summer or something.
Oh,
That
1857 or whatever. Yeah.
somewhere in there, but it was like every calendar month had a sub-freezing temperature in it, and so it was a completely lost harvest. And that wasn't the minimum. That was like a mini minimum in the middle of the two minimums. And allegedly, we're coming up on another minimum starting in 2030. And I think basically running for like 50, 60 years. I think it's going to be like pretty much the rest of our lives. And they call it a mini ice age. And it's not necessarily that we're going to see glaciers extending down into Texas or anything. But it's just that the first and last freeze dates are going to get closer, and the growing seasons are going to be severely limited, or at least curtailed, and temperatures are going to moderate uh, much farther south than they have in the past. and I I am believing it might be true. We'll see.
It could be. I've
But
noticed the summers up here have been changing too. We're getting
yeah,
hotter, longer summers now, so I don't know.
really.
Seems like the last, yeah, seems like the last 5 years or so we've been getting quite hot.
Oh, that's
Well, where I
interesting.
live, we get a lot of rain normally, but
Hmm.
it's been dry too. Um, we don't have a lot of humidity here. It's fairly dry. So when it does get hot, it's not so bad. Same when it gets cold. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's getting. If there is global warming, good. It's getting nicer.
Yeah, for you,
Yeah, for
not
me.
so good for me. Yeah,
No.
if there is global warming, I will be coming to Alberta. By the way, if it got too much hotter down here, yeah, you're right. I might head north. I hate Florida with a passion. Love the people, great people. I hate the the
Temperature.
climate in Florida. It's just awful, uh, and it smells bad, and the water tastes worse, and it's flat as a pancake. I was
Well,
just
the
down there
water
back
here is
in.
awesome. And the scenes are spectacular. The views are great. Um, yeah, I don't know. Couldn't convince me to leave here, that's for sure. Maybe when I get
Yeah,
old, I'll get a place in Yuma.
go down to Arizona and be warm
Warm
in the
my
winter.
bones up every winter. Yeah,
I knew an old man when I was I was an adult man. But it was my buddy's grandfather. But when he got old, he got into his 90s, got crazy. Oh God, he got nuts. And this was an old Southerner too. I mean, old Southerner, unreformed Confederate, and he had repressed his inner his inner racist as long as he could, and he got in his 90s, and it started coming out. And one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life is this this old boy. He couldn't keep his temperature up. So middle of the summer in Georgia, he'd be in a snowmobile suit outside in his driveway, sitting in the sun, trying to stay warm. I don't know what was his blood pressure. For whatever reason, he couldn't get warm even on the hottest day.
bad circulation.
So right before he died, he was sitting out on his porch or on his driveway in the middle of summer with his snowmobile suit on his little scooter, the little runabout scooters the old people
Yep,
ride. And he lived in this neighborhood that when it had been built in the 50s, it was all white, back when that was still a thing. But over the years, it had changed, and it was no longer all white. In fact, he might have been the last white guy on the street. And this poor black guy walked past his house, and his name, I won't tell you his name. I mean, he's long dead now, but it's funnier when you know his name. Uh, just got it in his head. It was still the 1950s, and old boy took off on his scooter, waving a pistol over his head in his full snowmobile suit in the middle of July, screaming after this poor black guy. You can imagine what he was screaming at him. Uh, and fortunately, my buddy and I had gone through all of his stuff and found all of his guns, and they were all a bunch of old, really cheap revolvers. I like Ivory Johnson revolvers, and so we had snipped with the fixed firing pins. So we had snipped all the firing pins off of them because the guy was just totally demented. So he was chasing this poor black guy down the street on his little scooter, his little old person scooter, waving this Ivory Johnson revolver around in the air, screaming at the guy, "You get out of my neighborhood, you so and so!" Poor guy, poor guy didn't know that it was it would have been a demilled revolver. And fortunately, the old boy died within like weeks of that. I don't even know how the cops didn't get called. It was insane. You know what? They probably did get called, but the sheriff he was from an old, family around here, uh, what's the right word? Well, one of the old admired families, and the way law enforcement works around here, it's that gets you out of a lot of trouble. So that's probably what happened. The sheriff probably actually did come out and just like, Cecil, what are you doing? Hush, hush, hush.
We'll be
He
there
was in
one
my
day too.
neighborhood. Yeah. Yep.
I'm gonna have to get going here. My wife wants her office back.
What? We're solving the world's problems in here.
I know.
She's not going to solve the world's problems.
Well, she might be
All
better
right,
at it
buddy.
than
No, we can't let him know that. We can't admit to that. All right, sir. Well, we appreciate the hell out of you. Are you still doing videos? Have you put anything up in a while?
No, I stopped doing it. Too much work. Too much stress. I mean,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, we won't plug your channel then, but we appreciate you. We talked for about 2 hours and 10 minutes here, so we
Yeah.
appreciate you
Well, we
investing
can
all
do.
this time in us.
Yeah. No worries.
And
Well, I guess maybe we can talk again when things happen, if things happen.
oh yeah. Well, when you get your citizenship papers and we can cross the border freely, we'll have
Yeah.
to do it in person.
To the Free Republic
I'll
of
come up for
Alberta.
your
Yes.
citizenship oath.
Okay.
I'll
Sounds
come
good.
up for your citizenship oath. All right, brother. We appreciate you. Man, we
All right.
appreciate
Thanks a
all of
lot.
y'all. Have a good evening, Mark. Mark was here the whole time. And I didn't even get to make fun of Catholicism. That's hurtful. He must feel like I don't care anymore. I'm sorry, Mark. Next time. Next time. All right, brothers. We appreciate you. Y'all have a good evening.